Hey everyone, welcome back into the Birdland Network where we talk all things Orioles baseball and Major League Baseball. And today we're back to talk about Major League playoffs. Yep, the regular season is over, the playoffs are here, the matchups are set, and starting today, the playoffs will begin. So I'm going to give you my breakdown from the Wild Card Series all the way up to the World Series, my winners, and a little bit about each matchup and why I think those teams are going to win and ultimately move on. But before we do that, if you are new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit that subscribe button and that bell notification. That way every time we do a new video or go live, you won't miss us. And give us a thumbs up. It definitely helps the video. So we're going to start in the National League first. We'll start over there. Obviously with the National League, there's some really good matchups. The Mets and the Braves got in the last day of the regular season. They needed to split for both of them to get in. And that's exactly what they did. They split. So that was a great two-game series there at that doubleheader to end the regular season. So that was kind of neat. But let's start with the series that's going to be first. That's going to be the Mets-Brewers series. We'll start there for the wild card. In the regular season, head-to-head, the Brewers dominated it. They won 5 out of 6 games. The Brewers scored 28 runs in those 6 games. The Mets scored 17. Obviously, the Brewers are favored in this series because they do have home field advantage. But for me, the Mets are coming in and they're playing really, really well. They're playing good baseball, and they have big-time players. They have Francisco Lindor, they have Brandon Nimmo, they have Pete Alonso. This is a really, really good team, and they're coming in on a roll. They're playing good baseball. And for me, this is going to be one of my upsets. I'm going to pick the Mets in 3 to upset the Brewers. I think it'll be a tight series, but I think ultimately the Mets get it done and the Mets move on to the next round. Alright, so now the next series is going to be the Braves-Padres series. This ought to be a good one too. I really think this is going to be a competitive series. In the regular season, they played 7 times. The Padres won the series 4-3. Padres scored 25 runs in those 7 games. The Braves scored 22 runs. So pretty tight series. The Braves, they have the best pitching in baseball. They have the best ERA, 3.49 team pitching. It's number 1 in all of baseball. San Diego was 12th with a 3.86 team ERA. But for me, the key is going to be Chris Sale. He's going to pitch that first game against the Padres. He's going to need to pitch well and get the Braves off to a good start. But I will say, I think not having Ronald Acuna is going to be, I think it's going to hurt the Braves. I really do. And I think that the Padres have tons of talent, and ultimately with the home field advantage, I think the Padres are going to squeak this series out in 3 games, and they're going to move on to the National League Division Series. Now we're into our Division Series, National League Division Series. The first matchup is going to be the Mets versus the Phillies. Now these two teams know each other really, really well. They faced each other 13 times during the regular season, and the Phillies won the series 7-6, so it was close. Back and forth the entire time. Of course, the Phillies, they have home field advantage because they're the number 2 seed, and they have great players like Bryce Harper, Zach Wheeler, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, and they're really, really good. The one thing I'll say about this series, in my opinion, the Mets are 15th in team pitching. The Phillies are 11th in team pitching. But I think the pitching is what's going to make the difference in this series. Whichever one pitches better will win the series. Because I think the offenses are going to do their part. But I think whichever one of these pitching staffs has a better postseason run in this series is what's going to be the difference. And for me, I think it's going to be the Phillies. I think they just have a little too much talent, have the home field advantage, and I think the Phillies are going to get past the hump this year, and they're going to make it to the National League Championship Series in 6 games. Now, on the other side of it, we have the Dodgers versus the Padres. Now, in this series, I think this is going to be one where, again, they know each other really, really well. They play each other 13 times during the regular season. The strengths of the Padres is going to be the fact that they have a lot of offense. But they're going to play really, really well against the Dodgers. They always do normally. But I got to tell you, this is Shohei Ohtani's first chance at playoffs. He's never been in the playoffs before. When he was with the Angels, they were just not good enough to make it. And he's now there. And this is a really, really good team. We didn't have a juggernaut team in baseball this year, but if you made me pick one, I'm going to have to pick the Dodgers. Dodgers have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. They're stacked. And with home field advantage on top of it, I got to go with the Dodgers over the Padres in this series. I just think that they're going to be fantastic. They're going to play really, really well. Ohtani's going to step up in the big stage. It's not going to get the better of him. And they're going to win. They're going to win the series and move on to the National League Championship Series against the Phillies. So in that NLCS, we are going to get the Phillies versus the Dodgers. So the number 1 versus number 2 seeds, they're going to make it this year, in my opinion. During the regular season head-to-head, the Phillies dominated the regular season. In 6 games, the Phillies won 5 out of 6. And I think this series is going to be a slugfest. You know, the Phillies and the Dodgers, they're lower, middle to low for team pitching, so no real dominant pitching staffs here. Good pitching staffs, but nothing dominant. But their offenses on both sides are so stacked. This is going to be a slugfest series. I really think it is. But for the Phillies, it's going to be, how do you limit Ohtani? You have to limit Shohei Ohtani and make some of these other guys beat you. Don't allow him to do it. They can't let him beat them. But in the end, I just think the Dodgers are too strong. I really do. I just think the Dodgers are way too strong this year. They're playing good baseball. Adding Ohtani just takes them to a whole nother level. And I think that the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to get back to the World Series in 2024. And they will be the National League representative in the World Series. Now we're going to move over to the American League, and we'll start with the Tigers-Astros Wild Card Series. During the regular season head-to-head, the Astros won that series 4-2. They played 6 times, with the Astros winning 4-2. The Tigers scored 27 runs in those 6 games. The Astros scored 29 runs. So nobody really dominated on the run side of things. In both series, the first one was in May, the other one was in June. The Houston won both series 2-1. In all 4 losses for Detroit, they scored a total of 6 runs in 4 games. So they weren't hitting when they lost. But then in the 2 games they won, they scored 21 runs. So for Detroit, it was like when they won big. But when they lost against Houston, it's because they just couldn't score. So this should be a pretty good matchup. But I got to say, not a lot of experience on the side of Detroit. Tons of experience on the side of Houston. And I've got to lean in that direction. Houston's just playing really good baseball right now, and I just can't see a way for the Tigers to win this series. Unless Tariq Skubal goes out in Game 1 and just dominates, I really think Houston's going to win this series, and they're probably going to win it in 2 games, and they're going to move on to the American League Division Series. On the other side, on the other part of the bracket, we have the Kansas City Royals at Baltimore facing the Orioles. Obviously, as you can see, I'm a big Orioles fan here. During the regular season head-to-head, the Orioles won the season series 4-2. 28 runs for the O's in that 6 games. 27 runs for Kansas City in those 6 games. So really, really close. They finished their season series way back in April. They played all 6 games in April. So the Orioles and the Royals haven't seen each other since April. And to me, both of these teams are a different team now than they were back then. Both are better, in my opinion. Both are healthier, and it's going to make for a good series. You have Bobby Witt on one side, you have Salvador Perez, you have Cole Reagans, but the Orioles have Gunnar Henderson, they have Jordan Westburg, they have Adley Rutschman, they have Corbin Burns, they have Zach Eflin, they have Anthony Santander, they have Colton Cowser, they have Cedric Mullins. They have a really good lineup. And I think overall, if the Orioles hitters against the lefties just do well, they don't even have to do great, just hold their own. I think 1-9, the Orioles lineup is better. Even with Bobby Witt being on the other side and he's an MVP candidate. I think ultimately the Orioles' experience, because now they do have some experience. These guys have tasted the postseason before, and they have home field advantage. I think the Orioles are going to get the better of the Royals in this series. I actually think they're going to do it in 2 games. It could go 3, but I think it's going to go 2. And the O's are going to move on to the American League Division Series. Now let's get into the ALDS. We'll start with the Guardians versus the Astros. In the regular season head-to-head, the Astros won it 4-1. So they won 4 out of 5 games. But Cleveland didn't hit well in the regular season against Houston. They only scored more than 3 runs 1 time in all 5 games. But I think both sides have really good hitters. Their pitching was stellar for both, as Cleveland was second in the American League with a 3.61 team ERA. Houston was 4th with a 3.74 team ERA. I think both of these teams are going to pitch. Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, Stephen Kwan, plenty of players on Cleveland's side, and everybody knows who's on Houston's side. They've got Kyle Tucker, they've got Jose Altuve, they've got plenty of players over there. So this series, I think, is really going to go 5 games, and it's going to be tight. But I do think that because Cleveland has the home field advantage, they are going to stop Houston's streak of 7 straight American League Championship Series represented appearances, and Cleveland's going to win this series, and they're going to move on to the ALCS. Now we move on to the Orioles versus the Yankees, and this one is a real tough one for me. Obviously, I'm biased. This is the Birdland Network. I love the Orioles. Well, let's talk about the series. In the regular season, the Orioles won the season series 8-5. They won 8 out of 13 games. So they played New York very, very well this year, and they played them really well last year. They went 4-2 in New York. They went 4-3 in Baltimore. So they won, whether it was home or away. They played well against the Yankees. They didn't dominate either place. They just played well enough. But the Yankees have special players. I mean, they have Aaron Judge. They have Juan Soto. They have Garrett Cole. They have really, really special players. But that being said, the Orioles play well against the Yankees. They have. They find ways to play well against them, and they limit the damage when the Yankees get going. They can limit that damage to just one inning or one game, and then they move on from that game. It's been one of the things they've done well. But for the Orioles, what they really need to do is their bullpen has to hold up in this series. If the Orioles have leads, they've got to hold the lead. Period. They cannot lose games late. That will be a backbreaker for them to do that. But they have to hold leads. And same with the Yankees. If the Yankees, the Yankees bullpen is iffy as well, they have to hold leads. But I think this series is going to be tight. I think it's going to go 5 games. And I think whichever bullpen performs better is going to be the one that's going to help win this series. And I think the Orioles bullpen is going to do a little bit better. I really do. And I think the Orioles are going to squeak this series out in 5 games. And they're going to pull the upset. If you can even really call it an upset, but I guess you have to with the Yankees being the 1 seed. I think the Orioles are going to squeak this series out in 5 games. They're going to upset the Yankees, and they're going to move on to the American League Championship Series to play the Cleveland Indians. So now let's get into that ALCS series with the Orioles versus the Guardians. In the regular season, the Guardians won the series 4-3. The first series was in Baltimore way back in June. Cleveland won that series 2-1. And then in August, they faced each other in Cleveland, and they split a 4-game set. Cleveland scored 42 runs in the 7 games. The Orioles scored 37 runs. So you're looking at like 6 runs a game for Cleveland, 5.3 for the Orioles. So high-scoring games. I think team pitching favors Cleveland a little bit more. I think team hitting favors the Orioles a little bit more. For the Orioles, their key is containing Jose Ramirez. Don't let him beat you. Don't let him have a big series. Try to contain him as best you can. That's their best hitter by far. He's their leader. Try to limit him as best you can. And then the big thing for the Orioles is keep Kansas City off the base paths. They were second in the American League in steals this year. And the Orioles don't hold runners well. Corbin Burns, who would probably start game 1 of that series, he doesn't hold runners well. So he needs to be the guy for the Orioles that holds runners, keep runners off base as best you can, and don't allow them to steal and just wreak havoc on the base paths. If they do that, I think they're going to be fine. As for Cleveland, keys for them, keep the ball in the ballpark. The Orioles were second in home runs in the American League. They like to mash. Keep the ball in the ballpark, make the Orioles, string together several hits to score runs. It's a lot harder to do that than it is to hit the ball out of the ballpark. So if they can, limit the Orioles, keep the ball in the ballpark, and get early leads. The Orioles tend to not be a come-from-behind team. When they get behind, it's difficult for them to come back and come back in games. So if Cleveland can keep the ball in the ballpark and gain early leads, they have a really good chance. And of course, they have a great closer, so that's going to be key too. But in the end, again, maybe I'm being a homer here. I do think the Orioles find a way to get this series, and I think they're going to win it in 6 games, and they're going to go to their first World Series in over 40 years. And Baltimore is going to be home to the World Series, at least some of the games in the World Series for the first time in 40 years. So I got the Orioles beating the Guardians in the ALCS and moving on to the World Series. So there you go. We have the Dodgers in the National League. We have the O's in the American League. It's a 1966 rematch World Series. And for anybody that knows that World Series, that 66 series was actually eerily similar to this series. And what I mean by that is this. You had a great team in the Dodgers with experience, phenomenal Hall of Fame players that were just great. Highly favored team. They had Don Drysdale. They had Sandy Koufax. They had just great players on their team. And facing an Orioles team that was a young team, an upstart team with a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong. Everybody knew they had a lot of talent. But was heavily the underdog against a great Dodgers team. And the Orioles went into that series and they swept the Dodgers in 4 games. I think the Dodgers scored like a total of 3 runs in the entire series. The Orioles just swept them. It was a huge upset. So here we go now, and we talk about this. The Orioles in the World Series. So when you look at this World Series, in the regular season they did face each other 3 times, with the Dodgers winning the series 2-1. All the games were decided by 3 runs or less. But again, what I think the Orioles have to do, they have to get early leads, and the bullpen has to hold those leads. It's just that simple. The Dodgers get a lead early against the Orioles, again, because they don't adapt to coming back. Try to find ways to limit Ohtani as best you can. And when the Orioles get on the base pass, I think they need to cause some havoc, because they can steal bases. And they're going to do that, and they're going to try to manufacture some runs. And I think the Orioles are going to do it. I really do. I don't know why, but I think with all the adversity they've had this year and all the injuries and getting all these guys back, and they're streaking going into the playoffs, I think the Orioles are going to pull a huge upset here, and they're going to shock the world, and they're going to do like they did in '66, and they're going to beat the Dodgers, but I don't think they're going to beat them in 4. I think this is going to go 7 games, and I actually think it's going to be a great World Series. It's almost going to be a callback to the 91 series between the Braves and the Twins, when you had all these 9th inning walk-off games, extra inning games, 1-run games. If you remember that series, it's one of the greatest of all times. I think this could be that. And I think it's going to be highly competitive. It's going to be highly stressful. And it's going to go down as a great one. And I think the Orioles are going to do it. I think they're finally, after 40 years, are going to bring a World Series championship back to Baltimore. So there you go, folks. That's my playoff predictions. I'm going to go with the home team. I am going to be a homer, and I think the O's are going to pull it. I think they're going to pull it out. I think they're going to find a way to get it done, and I think they're going to win it. I think they're going to find it and do it. But now it's out to you. I want to hear from you. Who do you think is going to go to the World Series? Give me your predictions. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Again, please subscribe to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button and give us a thumbs up for the video. It definitely helps to circulate it and get it out there. But thanks for joining me, guys. If you stayed this long, I appreciate you sticking with me. This has been a blast. Playoffs are here. I'm excited. I'm nervous, too. I have to be honest. I'm always nervous. But it's going to be an exciting time. Thanks for joining me today. Hope you all enjoyed the video. I enjoyed bringing it to you. Until next time, keep rooting for the O's or your team. And take care of yourselves and each other. Bye now.